They were seen to be pivotal, vital, fundamental members of the royal family.
I think the Queen would have been devastated at Harry and Meghan effectively abandoning the firm.
I like to think that I'm probably quite useful.
There was never a role for the second son, and a role would have to be created by his grandmother.
We've just focused on who we are as a couple.
With marrying a prince of the United Kingdom, with a bit of money, the world is open.
She had to be decisively ruthless in cutting him out because you cannot monetize the name of the monarchy so openly.
The allegations of racism levelled at the royal family, which were hugely damaging.
We're very much not a racist family.
They had real high hopes for this couple. You know, they embraced them.
And yet, for Harry and Meghan, it was never enough.
They signed this deal with the Queen. She walked away happy, Harry and Meghan walked away happy, and now they're coming back and they're trying to change it. And I don't think that's fair.
The Queen both adored William and Harry. William, because one day he would succeed his father in the fullness of time. Harry, because he was the second son. There was never a role for the second son, and a role would have to be created. He created it for himself at the beginning in the military, but then it had to be created for him, more so by his grandmother. Harry had a good 10 years in the military. His biggest mistake probably was leaving the military, because he was an army animal. He was the sort of person that suited to military life.
There was a couple of us that got pushed forward to the front seat instead of the back seat. The joy for me, because I'm one of those people that loves playing PlayStation and Xbox. So with my thumbs, I like to think that I'm probably quite useful.
He'd done his 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. He'd done a tour of duty as an Apache helicopter pilot. But my guess is that he opted out, because you don't do that all the time. You're given other jobs. And Harry's not the sort of person who would like to do other jobs, like driving a desk. That's not him. He's very much a doer rather than a sort of sitting behind a desk giving the orders for other people to do.
The Queen adored Harry because he made her laugh. And you know, he was sporty, he was a very good rider, he was funny, he was naughty, and I think she just loved his company.
I think the Queen had a lot of affection for Harry. And everything she gave to Harry, every time she forgave him for this, time after time after time, Harry would be causing problems for the royal family. He made certain comments, he was found drunk, he was naked playing billiards in Las Vegas. Time after time, he did heap scandal and problem on the royal family. She forgave him time after time. She gave him so many chances.
And at this time, the Queen, Charles, William had all got quite worried that Harry hadn't seemed to find his person. He hadn't been able to settle down, and you know, time was ticking along.
So clearly, the Queen, as a grandmother, wanted the best for all of her grandchildren. And she's very close to Harry and William. William had married Catherine and was blissfully happy, and she wanted the same for Harry. And when the news came that, you know, he was dating this beautiful, gorgeous, successful American actress, and they were clearly in love, yeah, the Queen was thrilled. And then the announcement that they were engaged happened. Yeah, but they're clearly, you know, delighted, enthralled with each other.
Certainly my understanding was that initially she was absolutely over the moon that Harry had met this someone who he'd fallen clearly head over heels in love with. So I think there was a great sense of relief and excitement about meeting her, and then, of course, welcoming her into the family.
I think Harry took Meghan to have tea, and the two women according to Harry, got along very well, and I think they did because, A, Meghan likes dogs, and, you know, sort of stroked the corgis, and the corgis liked her, which was a big plus. And B, the Queen had these great aspirations for Meghan. The Queen saw Meghan and Harry as really spearheading the young Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth was the Queen's baby.
There was an element of joy at the beginning, the fact that he was getting married, he was getting a partner, and there were going to be a double act in getting things done on behalf of the monarchy, working with the monarchy, with the monarch, and with other members of the royal family.
And also, I think it was really great for the monarchy. Here we are, you know, an institution that's centuries old, you know, embracing a biracial, you know, divorcee American into the family. And there was almost like a great hope now. This was the future of the monarchy. The monarchy is being secured.
She had appointed them as president and vice president of the Commonwealth Youth Trust, a big, big job amongst the 56 nations that make up the membership of the Commonwealth.
And they had real high hopes for this couple. You know, they embraced them. And they were really looking forward to having her join the firm and supporting the firm and enhancing the firms.
She was very warm to Meghan. I remember they did an engagement up in Cheshire, and they you know, it looked like the start of a very good friendship.
The Queen went really above and beyond. I mean, she took Meghan out on engagements. She made her own team of staff accessible to Meghan so that this newcomer into the royal family had a support system in place. Don't forget, lessons had been learned from the past. They had been learned from where things had gone so wrong with Diana. And of course, it had been a great success with Kate Middleton marrying into the royal family. So I think, you know, there was such a thing as happily ever after, and it was certainly the Queen's hope that that would be the case for Meghan and Harry.
Unfortunately, it didn't turn out like that.
That was amazing, wasn't it? Oh, I think we're going to share that footage. I'm going to share this footage with everyone.
I think feelings changed, certainly in the run-up to the wedding. I think the Queen was aware that Meghan could be quite difficult, that Harry could be very difficult. I mean, look at the furore over what tiara Meghan was going to wear for her wedding day. You know, the diva in all of that, in fact, was Harry more than it was Meghan. But it certainly, I think, was a red flag to the Queen that things might not be as plain sailing as they were last time round with William and Catherine.
I mean, for somebody with intelligence to say, need to spray St. George's Chapel because it smells musty, that's interfering with history.
Well, if the Queen ever heard about that, I think she would have found it very amusing. I think she would have thought, well, what on earth is the girl going on about? The thing that worried the Queen was that Meghan was estranged from her father, although she was close to her mother. And I think that it was a bit of a messy situation in Meghan's family, and that was what worried the Queen.
To totally throw out her father with a dirty bathwater because he just so happened, mistakenly, cooperated with the paparazzi. She turned her back on him completely, and that's it. But she had high hopes for both of them. They had successful tours of Australia, had a successful tour of South Africa. There are allegations that she said during one tour, after a walkabout, I should be paid for this. Now, Harry either didn't give her the nuts and bolts about what monarchy is all about and what is expected, or he did and she wasn't interested.
I don't know if the Queen had time to do more to help Meghan adjust. I think she tried to put people around Meghan that could help her, but Meghan had to be prepared to listen. Because she was an actress, she made her the patron of the National Theatre. She did go out of her way to try and place the right things for Meghan, and she knew that Meghan's voice, you know, as a feminist and as a woman, would be something that would be very useful. So the Queen was very aware of what Meghan's strengths were. I just don't think she realised what Meghan's weaknesses were.
Then, of course, once they were married, there was a sense of Harry and Meghan wanting to break free, wanting to have their own charitable foundation, have their own estate independently of William and Kate at Kensington Palace.
Meghan didn't seem to be very interested in learning what it's like to be married to a member of the family. Meghan had very preconceived ideas. She wanted to be a princess, she wanted to live in a castle, and she wanted to have the life of Riley. Well, that is not really what being a member of the royal family is like, and I think the Queen saw that.
I don't believe for a moment, when Meghan married Harry, that she had any intention of staying in the UK, of becoming a royal. She was written out from Suits. Suits was coming to an end, a series that she had done for quite a long time. Hollywood wasn't beating a path to her front door, so there are no parts in the offing. She was of an age where she had been married. There are even suggestions she'd been married twice before, but that's never been substantiated. But she was looking for a husband, and she got married to him, and she enjoyed the sense of occasion. She manipulated it to what she wanted. She had an idea of what she wanted to do. It wasn't necessarily acting, so you've got to create another career for yourself. Well, with a handle like Duchess in front of you, with marrying a prince of the United Kingdom, with a bit of money, the world is open.
So I think she was mindful that Harry and Meghan wanted a different route, and she did as much as she could to accommodate it. I think she exercised a lot of patience, a lot of leniency. She gave them far greater scope and latitude than previous royals have had, and yet for Harry and Meghan it was never enough.
When Megxit was jumping in front of the Queen, I think that initially a lot of things were being deferred to Prince Charles at that stage. Initially, she would have thought, well, I don't want this on my desk. Charles, deal with your son. Until it went public, until he basically threatened the authority of the monarch by producing that Instagram post that said, this is what we intend to do, none of which had been cleared.
They virtually threw it in her face.
When Harry and Meghan decided that they do not want to be living in the United Kingdom and full-time working royals, but they sort of wanted a hybrid existence so they could do their own life and make their own money overseas, either in Canada or in America, but still do the sort of the odd royal engagement here and have police protection. The Queen was clearly very anxious about that because she'd seen it happen before.
The Queen was very adamant that they couldn't be half in and half out. She had seen it fail countless times before, whether that was with Sarah Ferguson embarking on commercial deals.
The Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, as they are now, so Sophie and Edward, both had their careers. He is the head of Ardent Productions, she had her own PR company, but they were still doing royal duties. And it all crashed and burnt. There was allegations that they were using their royal titles to make money. So they gave up their businesses to become full-time working royals.
It just didn't work.
There's no middle way. You're either in or you're out. You can't have one foot in both camps.
So however much Harry and Meghan had tried to come up with a new model, it wasn't something the Queen was going to entertain. And I think that showed, well, certainly the Queen's experience and her lack of willingness to compromise, because she knew that if she compromised, it could potentially be at the cost of the monarchy, and she wasn't willing to do that.
Her judgment was second to none. It was absolutely extraordinary. And I remember joining the royal household as a sort of a new person, very enthusiastic. I thought, gosh, you know, I'm going to change the world here. And I put a memo up to the Queen about an issue, and I said, this, Your Majesty, this is what I think we should do. This is a great way forward. And a note came back very quickly saying, Ailsa, we did that in 1973. It didn't work then, it's not going to work now. And I thought, Yes, absolutely. Don't reinvent the wheel, because this is a person who has seen so much throughout her lifetime, throughout her reign, and she will know instinctively what is going to work and what isn't going to work. So that was a good lesson for me.
I think at that moment she realised that she had to act on behalf of the whole monarchy. She had to be decisive, ruthless really, in cutting him out, because you cannot monetarise the name of the monarchy so openly and then serve as a working member of the royal family. It doesn't work like that. Otherwise, it looks like you can buy the monarchy. No, she had to be decisive over that, and she was. Even by changing the name of their charity wing, their website, Sussex Royal, they had to change. That's the basic, obvious, that was the most obvious one. It was quite clear that, the Queen is very capable of being ruthless when it felt that the monarchy as an institution and a brand was being threatened.
And that was the clear message. And I don't think the public would have accepted it either. The public don't want members of the royal family making money out of their position and their wealth.
I think the Queen's opinion of Meghan at the start of Meghan's relationship with Harry and around the time of them leaving Britain changed markedly. Megxit was the absolute last straw for the Queen.
She would have been very, very, very disappointed.
There were big plans for Harry and Meghan. They were seen to be pivotal, vital, fundamental members of the royal family. The idea that they would be stepping down was almost unthinkable for the Queen. It was a huge thing for her. She was rather blindsided by it. She never expected it to come to that. And of course, it came at a time in her personal life when she was going through grave difficulties. The Duke of Edinburgh's health was really ailing. She was in her twilight years. This was the point in her reign when she probably just wanted to be able to leave it to the next generation and know that everything was in good order for when her demise eventually came. And yet, it was in chaos.
I think the Queen would have been devastated at Harry and Meghan effectively abandoning the firm. I think she may have understood many of his concerns. I think she probably listened to Meghan when she says that, the life being a royal just wasn't for her. But I think she'd be devastated after everything that she gave them both. She gave them so many chances, and then what happens? They didn't give it long enough and they decide to walk away. So I think on just the pure family relationship side, she would have been so sad to lose the pair of them. But I think she would have been devastated that she didn't have them working for her in the firm and the UK.
I think the Queen had never imagined that she wouldn't be seeing her great-grandchildren at family get-togethers. So she had no idea how very cut off they were going to become.
They wanted to be independent, which is why they left the royal family and went off to Canada first, and then from Canada, just before COVID lockdown, they went to America and California and settled in, where they have been ever since. They did an Oprah interview. They had a captive audience with Oprah, in which they rubbished the royal family, she particularly, rather than him.
The Oprah interview was, in my view, pretty brutal. Talking about all sorts of things, including, the question mark about the baby's skin colour when it was born.
Concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
One thing that really upset the Queen was when Harry and Meghan gave their interview to Oprah Winfrey and they criticised the royal family and they accused the royal family of being racist.
The whole thing had been rehearsed. I mean, you look at Meghan, here's the actress coming out in the way she portrayed herself, the way she sat, the look on her face, the way she allowed her eyes to well up and her tear ducts to open.
It was ultimately a huge race row for the royal family, at which they found themselves unwittingly at the centre of something deeply unpleasant.
I think if the Queen had been 10 years younger, she'd have been more forthright at that moment. Again, it was seen as a little bit of a cop-out. I think they didn't push back strongly against these claims. They were in shock, I think.
The allegations of racism levelled at the royal family, which were hugely damaging both here and overseas, which forced William to address television cameras to reassure people.
Sir, have you spoken to your brother since the interview?
No, I haven't spoken to him yet, but I will do.
And can you just let me know, is the royal family a racist family, sir?
No, we're very much not a racist family.
It was only William who said we're very much not a racist family and went on the record. That actually pushed back. And I think that shows his understanding of a modern world, modern media world, rather than Queen and even Charles, because by not saying something, it almost said you were accepting what has been said. So William was astute there.
We don't know how the Queen felt about the Oprah interview. We can imagine, but we can certainly read quite a lot into that very brief statement, which was issued eventually by the palace.
They waited 1 or 2 or 3 days before they put something out, so it was thoughtful. Even though they were under a lot of pressure to say something, they wanted to say something, but they wanted to say the right something. So they waited, they crafted it, and they put out this very brief but incredibly powerful statement.
We always remember that phrase, deliciously delivered.
Masterful. I'd love to have taken credit of that myself. It was absolutely masterful.
Recollections may vary. That's the Queen basically saying, we don't believe everything that you've said, but she says it in such a lovely, polite and damaging way.
Which was very clearly the Queen's characteristically diplomatic way of saying, we remember things rather differently to how Harry and Meghan remembered them.
Those 3 words coming out of Buckingham Palace did ring true to a lot of people.
And it's funny, you hear it quoted all over the place now, so it really resonated with people.
I think that was a reckoning that she realised that, you know, she'd probably lost Harry and Meghan by then.
However, if you look at that statement, there are other elements in it. There is an olive branch there. You know, she talks about we were unaware of the depth of concerns and the depths of issues that you had working in the royal family. It wasn't only that line. She did, in that statement, leave open the chance of reconciliation.
So I think Prince Harry and Meghan may have won the initial battle, but I think the Queen won the war.
I think for me, an important aspect in the relationship between Harry, Meghan and the Queen was when the Sussexes decided to call their daughter Lilibet. The Queen was upset. You know, she liked the name Lilibet. It was her pet name as a child. It was what her parents called her. You know, Philip would call her Lilibet. It was her name. No one else is called Lilibet. She's called Lilibet. And I think we're led to believe that what she was upset about was that they didn't really ask her. If they'd just come to her and said, we want to call our daughter Lilibet, I think she would have, you know, thought about it, thought, well, actually, what a lovely tribute to me. But it was announced without her being told, without the rest of the royal family being informed, and it was an important name to her. And yeah, I think in her later years, she maybe didn't deserve that.
The impact globally on the Queen's death was absolutely phenomenal. I think we had never seen anything like it at all in our lifetime. This was the most famous woman in the world. I think there was a profound amount of shock and huge sadness from the people who knew her, from her family, from her friends, but also from people who she had served.
The Queen had been on the throne for 70 years. She was enormously important to so many people in the UK and around the world. She was one of the most popular royals ever. Everybody loved her, and it's remarkable that she maintained that the fact that everybody put her at the top of the list of their most popular royals, despite things crumbling around her, despite scandals within her family, she always remained the most loved royal.
I think that Harry and Meghan's behaviour after the Queen died was really appalling.
There was 6 hours of Netflix, which again they rubbished the royal family, and then there was Harry's very thick book, Spare, which probably has remained by now. Again, rubbishing the royal family, not admitting for a moment at any time that they might have been wrong, that they might have got things wrong.
It was one of the best-selling books of all time, and of course it was riveting, but it dissed his own family, which was unforgivable and actually unnecessary.
£28.
You know, there have been so many moments over the course of my career covering the royals where, you know, you have these jaw-dropping moments, you know, the publication of Spare, just jaw-dropping astonishment.
Harry has got me.
But the biggest problem they had is that this was for the first time in many, many years, since the abdication crisis, when Edward VIII as Duke of Windsor wrote a tell-all memoir. This was the first time there'd been a memoir of this magnitude damaging the royal family. But the reality of all of this is that that was a powerful statement at that time.
And everyone knew it was all about them. And I think that probably Harry's father just thought, thank goodness that my mother or Harry's grandmother isn't alive to see this. And I think then the royal family closed ranks on them, because every time that they saw Harry, he then reported it. So he couldn't keep his mouth shut.
The issue I have with Harry and Meghan right now is that they agreed the terms with the late Queen. They agreed Megxit terms at the Sandringham summit. It was drawn up by the Queen and all her aides and Charles and William and presented to Harry and Meghan, and they agreed to it. So in many ways, when we talk about legacy, about the late Queen, the Megxit deal was one of her main, not necessarily achievements, but it was one of the signposts that she achieved in the last couple of years of her reign. It was something she could walk away from and say, well, we struck a deal with Harry and Meghan for them to go off to California, but they're trying to rewrite this deal. They're trying to get armed security. Harry's trying to come back more and more. There's all rumours about them still wanting this half in, half out, and I don't think that's fair.
They were never short of money. They were never short in terms of their security. But quite rightly, the question was asked, if they're living abroad, why should the taxpayer pay for their security? The answer is they shouldn't.
Harry and Meghan leaving the royal families had put an enormous strain on King Charles's reign, because there are so few working members of the royal family. And I think, you know, it's Charles's son. Harry is Charles's son, so I feel he's very sad. And he did try. He did try with Meghan. I think also, like his mother, he had high hopes for Meghan. He's probably a little more cautious than the Queen was, but I think it's put a huge strain on his reign, not least because the press are absolutely fascinated by everything Harry and Meghan do. And then, of course, with the King's cancer, it's made it even more difficult. So he has actually had an extremely difficult reign so far.
The issue of his son and reconciliation, that's not going to happen anytime soon, so don't hold your breath on that. Until Harry can display an element of trust, there's not going to be an open door to him to return to the UK. And if he wanted to return to the UK, I doubt whether his wife would return with him, because that is not in her game plan. Her game plan was always to be in the US, where she knows and they know her, and where she's trying to make a name for herself. Will she succeed? Well, only time will tell.